Club. And previously she was Vice President Education and Vice President Membership at Cranfield Speakers. In this time, she achieved the following awards: Competent Communicator, Competent Leader, Advanced Leadership Bronze, and Level 4 in Pathways Presentation Mastery. Feedback, regular evaluations and contests have been the cornerstone of growth for Tosin. Driven by quality evaluations, one of her goals is providing inspiring and motivational evaluations to members, and she believes that that is the key to the development of club members. Outside Toastmasters, she's a researcher in offshore wind energy and currently resides in Milton Keynes. Tosin, have you checked your audio? Have you?
Yes, I have.
Oh, good, there you are. Have you pinned the timer?
Yes, I have.
Okay, with a speech entitled "A Toastmasters Meeting is a Well-Designed Building," please welcome Tosin Adedipe.
Thank you
Very much, Evelyn, and a very good morning to you, District 71. I'm really pleased to be here today, and I'm grateful that I have to share this speech with you. The title of my speech is "A Toastmasters Meeting is a Well-Designed Building." Before I get into this, I have a question to ask you, my fellow audience. If you thought about the Burj Khalifa and thought about Cranfield Toastmasters International meetings and the human skeletal system, I wonder what you will think they all have in common. You can write those in the chat and I'll just like to see any of your answers. So when you think about that building, the Burj Khalifa, Toastmasters International clubs, and the human skeletal system, what exactly do you think about? I don't know if you'll be able to see anything or be able to enter things in the chat, so I'll just go right on. Structure, I can see structure. Structure from Camellia, structure from Carla. Exactly. They all have structures. They're all well built. Thank you, Bright. Thank you, Toby. And I think this is one of those things that we all think about, but do we actually really ponder upon it? When we think about the Toastmasters meeting structure, on the right-hand side, we see the anatomy of the Toastmasters meeting. And quite a number of us are familiar with this structure. You have the Toastmaster of the evening, impromptu speakers, the prepared speeches, evaluations, and other reporting roles. But there's one thing that I like to think about when I think about Toastmasters meetings, and it's that it's a really good place to start, but it involves a lot more than that simple anatomy. So my objective here is to help you recall and nurture the strengths that you have within the Toastmasters DNA so that you can improve your club quality. Toastmasters is fundamentally about club meetings, and good club meetings are the cornerstone of successful clubs, whichever way you choose to look at it. And I believe that the club experience has to be fresh, it has to be fun, it has to be sometimes fast-paced, and it has to be inspiring and informational. But when we think about all those words, what exactly does that look like? And I'll share a story with you that I find quite inspiring. And some of you are very familiar with this building. It's the Sydney Opera House. And there's a story behind it that many of us are not familiar with, but will be good to start with. In 1955, the New South Wales Conservatorium of Music needed a new building because they had expanded a lot more than where they were at the time. And so they set up an international design competition for their new opera house, as we would have with our Toastmasters International speeches. They got 233 entries, and those were submitted from about 95 countries from all over the world. And one person emerged as winner. The Danish architect, Oluwatosin, won, and then the idea of this building as we know it was born. One thing people don't know is that this structure took nearly 2 decades, and it cost about 1 billion Australian dollars in today's money to bring to life. And to be honest, every project manager's nightmare, it was 10 years behind schedule, and it was a massive 14 times over budget. And one thing I like to think about when I see this building is that it led to so many groundbreaking architectural designs and structural innovations. And to this day, it stands as a sensation in modern architecture. This story I find inspirational because no matter how much time or effort it takes to build something, if done right, it will stand the test of time. But we shouldn't have to waste time doing all things that have been invented and reinventing the wheel. And if you see this building, it may look so convoluted and it may have so many things that look quite different. But I think it has about the same basic structural elements as any other building. If we look at any other building like the Burj Al Arab, the Empire State Building, the Burj Khalifa, or even my favorite, the Gherkin, there's something they all have in common, and it's similar to a Toastmasters meeting. No matter how contorted the shape, how international, or how sky high the structure or the meeting, they all have the same building blocks, even as a bungalow. And we can take that as something to think about. The club meeting building blocks, I believe, can come in 3 very simple but very solid structures. You think about them in terms of discipline, you think about them in terms of the formalities, and you think about them in terms of maintenance. And in terms of discipline, you think through the core values, member service, 3 MPs, member engagement, and the rest. And for formalities, we have our educational program, the executive committee, and all they have to do. The meeting anatomy that I told you about, that's just a very small subset in the entire building blocks. And then we go over to maintenance in doing our club quality MOT like you would on your car. And this really reminds me of things that we need to hold dear as Toastmasters members. When it comes down to the disciplines, I think about the Kremlin. And it's such an astounding structure because no matter the color, shape, it has the same distinct features. And I think this stands out, especially with Toastmasters when we think about our core values. But before I get into that, what would you think the definition of discipline is? I think about discipline quite differently from perhaps a military person would define discipline. And we're definitely not here for definition wars, but I will, as an authority right now, tell you what I think discipline is. I think that discipline is a thing that we do to make sure that we can build and maintain good and beneficial habits that will sustain growth and development. And I think that when we think about the Toastmasters discipline, we need to be looking at the core values. And one of the ways I remember that is I just think about the acronym RISE, and it talks about respect, integrity, service, and excellence. And we're putting forth all of those core values in everything we do at every meeting. The next discipline is member service DNA. And I put DNA there because it's something that is so embedded within Toastmasters already, and that's membership service. There's a parable that I like that says that if you want to be great, you have to be the servant of all. And that's where this thought behind Toastmasters, I feel resonates with me. We have to be serving our members every single chance we get. And now to the 3 MPs, which I got an inspiration from the UK MPs. And I see that as meeting planning, preparation, and production. There's a whole lot that goes into it. And at the end of the day, no matter how well you've planned or prepared. When it comes to production day, when it comes to being on stage, as a theatre production will be, anything can go wrong. And you need to make sure that you're focusing on this so that you can put out an astounding presentation to wow your audience every chance you get. I think about membership engagement, and this is a continuous thing. It's not something you do once and forget about. The VPM, the VPE, the president, and every member of the club needs to make sure that they're keeping that conversation going and helping members meet their goals. When you think about timing, I would have put this somewhere else, but I feel that this is one of those things that I like to think about. When I think about timing, I think about Toastmasters, and then I can apply it in every single area of my work or my academics. When I think about formalities, I like to think about this in terms of a football stadium. Many people forget that this is also a building. It's a structure, and we have something similar in Toastmasters. When we come to watch the footballers or the players play, it's a whole display and it's quite entertaining, it's quite surreal, but they have the formalities they need to follow through. You have the referee who makes sure that everything is done right, and also nobody's cheating or just trying to get one up the other. And so we have our educational program, which Toastmasters has merged into pathways. And regardless of any path, everyone is definitely going towards a goal. When we think about the executive committee, they ensure that all the wheels and bolts and nuts are really aligned and make sure they bring forth the best quality. And I like to think about the meeting anatomy, like I shared earlier, and that's just a subset of the entire formalities of Toastmasters. When we think about hats, I like that acronym because when I heard about it, it just helped me understand what Toastmasters was really all about when I first joined. And then I heard it again later on. And it's a constant reminder that the handshake, and now that we're online, the handovers need to be really good. We think about the applause, we think about the slips and the time. But slips are quite important because we need feedback, and that crowns it all. We think about the Distinguished Club Programme. It's not just a tick in the box, but it's something that helps you make sure that every player and all the audience, like we have in a football stadium, are doing things to the best of their ability and reaching their targets and hitting those goals. Recognition. I think recognition is something that has to always be resounding. If members are recognised for their hard work and what they've put into their goals, you see that people are encouraged to do more, and not just to do more for themselves, but also to do more for other members. And that's at the heart of Toastmasters. Mentoring can be seen as a formality, but I think it expands itself beyond that to maintain the club quality, which I'll share as a third building block. When we think about maintaining quality, what do you think about? I like this Lego building because it shows me something quite different from what I'm used to. You think about buildings and you think about real structures, but it could be colorful, and they're real life Lego buildings. I couldn't find any copyrighted ones to put here. And so I just showed you this from a standpoint to make my point. When we're thinking about our club quality, this is more like a health check that we do on ourselves. And we think about the moments of truth, SWOT, membership building, and the club uniqueness. It can be as colorful as you want, as international as you want it. And now that we're on Zoom, there may be hard things, but they're really great things that we can take hold of. The learning environment has to be fun, fresh, like I said, and very vibrant. And we have to think about succession planning to make sure that we're transferring those formalities and those disciplines to the next set of people as the club membership ebbs and flows. Before I leave you today, I'll talk about club meetings as really beautiful pyramids. But I don't like to think about pyramids in the old archaic way, because the old pyramids, the Egyptian pyramids, are nice. But how can we make sure that our clubs are not holding on to their past glory and making things fresh every single time? And I think about this in terms of the Louvre in Paris. And it's one thing that reminds me that we should not rest on our old methods. If glass and steel is what helps to make structures, then we need to make sure we're keeping things fresh. It may take effort and take time, but we need to also get used to the technology or any inventions to make sure we're delivering on the Toastmasters promise. Going back to the iconic buildings that I talked about earlier, we think about disciplines, the formalities, and maintaining quality as some of those standard building blocks. But there's something else that doesn't quite fit. And it's just one thing that I feel always describes Toastmasters and the meetings. And it's seeing Toastmasters from the perspective of a gardener. I like to draw from this gardening metaphor because club meeting structures are not so much rigid like buildings, but they're like gardens, and they can be nurtured, they can be pruned to make sure that when every member walks in through those doors, they're experiencing the freshness, the beauty, and achieving their goals. So to leave you today, the actionable steps that I think are that club leaders can learn to find how clubs can improve on their quality by using resources like the Master Your Meetings and many other handouts that we see on Toastmasters International website. We can have people do educational speeches, especially at key times in the year, so that members are taught about what Toastmasters is really all about. Thinking about club quality, how often should you run MOTs? That's really up to you. The moments of truth just help you to come to realization and reality to your experience. And we need to also be teaching the club how meetings should be planned, produced, and also prepared for. That may be the VPE's role, but everyone needs to make sure that they're doing their best to make sure the club is at the high standard and delivering on the Toastmasters promise. Thanks very much.